Jonathan, you have a tough act to follow, right? But you're used to that. So Tom was kind enough to share with us kind of a 10,000-foot view of policy and technology, which I found was very understandable, and I very much appreciate you doing that. So we've asked Jonathan to come in and kind of lower the playing field a little bit down to our industry level, kind of get into more of the specifics of some technology and policy. And so Jonathan will help us kind of weave through that intricate issue. So Jonathan Adelstein, as I think most of us in this room know, is the president and CEO of the Wireless Infrastructure Association. From 2002 to 2009, Jonathan served as commissioner of the FCC, twice nominated by George W. Bush, and twice confirmed by the U.S. Senate. In 2009, Jonathan was nominated by President Barack Obama and served as the administrator of the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Utilities Service, RUS. There he oversaw investment of over $7 billion that was allocated by the federal government under the Recovery Act for rural broadband deployment. And in 2012, Jonathan took over as president and CEO of WIA. So prior to serving on the FCC, Jonathan served as a staff member in the U.S. Senate for 15 years, the last 7 as a senior legislative aide to the Senate Majority Leader, Tom Daschle. So please help me welcome Jonathan Adelstein to the podium.
Thanks, Andy. Good morning, everybody. Great to be back again. Steve, thanks for inviting me back. I must be doing something right to keep bringing me back, but maybe this is my last chance if I don't get it right. And it's such a great show you put together every year. It gets better and better. And it can't get any better than starting with my old boss, Senator Daschle. I rarely get intimidated speaking, but having him in the room, you know, I used to write speeches for him, and having him sit in one of mine makes me really actually pretty nervous. But he's an amazing speaker, but an amazing person, and always, you know, ahead of his time as he was trying to walk us through the future. This morning, I remember that story about us that he might not even recall, but back in 1999, we held the first summit on rural broadband. Back then, we didn't even know what, a lot of people didn't know what broadband meant. We knew the internet. What was broadband? That was sort of a faster internet. But we were already thinking about what the future would be, and how would we make sure that rural states like South Dakota would get access to that kind of infrastructure that was so important for their future, for their economy. So we held this summit in the Senate office building, and a lot of luminaries walked in the door. You know, Chuck Schumer actually came to this, and I was surprised because he was a senator from New York, but he was always mindful of the rural parts of New York State. And CEOs came walking in, the CEO of AT&T, Michael Armstrong. And you might have forgotten this, but another CEO came walking the door. We were all really impressed. Bernie Evers. Come on, from here in the South Marlis Summit region, of course, good Mississippian. And back then, of course, we were ahead of our time then. You know, he hadn't yet been convicted or even accused. So, but I don't imagine how far ahead we were. But it really was a great event, and it led to a lot. And so I really owe my career to Senator Daschle, who recommended me to George W. Bush for a spot on the FCC, and it wasn't an easy decision. A lot of people were kind of angling for that spot, and I was very fortunate, and it really changed my life for the better to be able to be of service at that level of government, and it led me eventually here to all of you today to try to help this industry to succeed, building on the skills that I learned both with Senator Daschle and the Senate. You know, trying to cut deals back then, the Senate really worked well. We got so many bills through. He would get bill after bill, unanimous consent after unanimous consent, nominees. We got things done, and it just isn't the same anymore. And we need people like you there, and more of you. As someone who spent a lot of time in Washington, I think we both know that government doesn't always solve problems. As a matter of fact, government can cause a lot of problems. It causes a lot of problems for our industry. You all deal with it every day, certainly in wireless. And our job at the Wireless Infrastructure Association is to help you solve them, to make sure that we're the industry's voice in. If we're the industry's voice in trying to create laws that help you do your job, whether it's getting co-location done. We got a law passed through Congress that you can co-locate on existing structure without going through zoning, and making sure the FCC implemented that bill properly, or whether it's making sure that your latest types of deployments go through. And I'm going to get into today what we're doing. We're doing not just the work in Washington, but I'm going to go through the work that we're doing in the states. We're going to get a lot of state legislatures to streamline infrastructure on that level. I think we've saved this industry many millions of dollars to get the job done, and most importantly, make it easier to get it done, make it more predictable so that you can get it done. As Senator Daschle mentioned in his conversation, there's a lot going on in Washington right now. There is a huge amount of legislation and regulation that is being considered, and I wanted to walk through a little this morning. And what we're seeing is that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle and the Trump administration are all backing us. They're all saying, how do we get more broadband out more quickly? They recognize that broadband isn't like any other industry. Data that's going over these broadband networks that you all are building is transforming virtually every industry in this country. And they understand that the future depends on action and legislation and regulation to make sure that the job gets done. So I'm going to go through the fact that we're getting back into the White House, Congress, and at the FCC and explain what's happening. First, at the White House, we've heard a lot from this President administration on infrastructure. Senator Daschle pointed out that it's going to be a real uphill battle. It's highly unlikely we're going to see a major infrastructure package go through this year. But we did work closely with the White House on this package. We're working with Congress on it, because even if it doesn't get done this year, perhaps there'll be an opportunity in the next Congress to get this through. And there's really two big parts of it. You've got the funding aspect of it, but you also have the idea of streamlining. But before the infrastructure package passed, we got the Omnibus Appropriations Bill enacted, which was really a breakthrough. I mean, the Omnibus Appropriations Bill that was referred to by Senator Daschle, that was approved last week, had some really important provisions in it that we've been working on for a long time. And since Congress only does like one bill a year that actually gets anything done, they packaged all of this in the budget bill they finally got done. So we've got what's called the Mobile Now Act was included, or provisions of it were included in the Omnibus Appropriations Bill. That bill reduces regulatory obstacles that you all face every day in building wireless networks, particularly focuses on streamlining siting in federal lands and federal buildings. So it might not help you every day, but I'll get into this in more detail in a bit. It also has provisions in it that are designed to promote the development of next generation mobile broadband networks by ensuring that more spectrum is available. And NTIA, which is the federal agency that oversees federal spectrum, has to look into how to get more commercial spectrum into the marketplace. And the larger bill also included elements of the Sandy Act, and one that really I think is important for this industry that we worked hard to get in, make sure that infrastructure companies, when there's a disaster, the Sandy Act is designed after Hurricane Sandy to try to improve response times to restoring wireless and broadband and telecom service. But one of the things we were having trouble with was infrastructure companies couldn't get to their own equipment when there was a disaster. So we made sure that infrastructure companies now have access, you're on the list, so that when there's a disaster, you can get to the generator, you can get to the cell site, just like a carrier could. I'm also pleased that the measure that Senator Daschle pointed out has resources for rural broadband. There's a pilot program at my old agency, the Rural Utility Service, that was funded with $600 million under the bill for both grants and loans to try to get service out to underserved areas. So really nice to have that done. The law is the law now. So this is actually going to be the rule. Let's see if I get the next. See, wireless sometimes doesn't always work for wireless people. Just a magic trick like this, and it goes too far. There's too much magic, I suppose. There's other provisions that are being considered in Congress. The Thune-Schatz bill is another bill that would streamline wireless broadband, which is something that we're working together with them to try to improve that. The SPEED Act is something that Senator Wicker from here in Mississippi has introduced to try to promote wireless broadband in small cells along the rights-of-way. There's a FAA reauthorization bill that we were talking about at breakfast this morning. Some of you are aware that the FAA reauthorization bill had a provision that required us to light and mark communications towers that were 50 to 200 feet in rural areas. A complete waste of time. But you know, every industry in Washington has a trade association. Even the cell tower industry has a trade association that I have in the head. But guess what? The crop dusters have a trade association too. And the crop dusters were worried about these little towers that were going up for weather stations. They can put up a wind tower called meteorological towers. And so their lobbyists, so-called, dropped in, so to speak, a provision in the FAA bill that required that we all paint and mark all these towers. It was going to cost our industry $250 million. So WI went to work, we hired some lobbyists. I tried to hire Senator Daschle's wife. Linda Daschle used to be administrator of FAA, but she had some other conflicts, so she recommended somebody else, and they were brilliant. We got the job done. We've got the House and Senate lined up to fix that, saving the industry $250 million, which is a pretty good return on investment on your dues. So we're thrilled about that. You know, another big issue that we have to worry about is net neutrality. Net neutrality is something that, you know, we're all concerned about making sure the internet stays open. But Senator Daschle talked about going back to the 19th century regulation. Literally, that's what Chairman Wheeler did. He went back to utility regulation that was designed for common carriers or railroads in the 19th century and how they would carry traffic. But it really wasn't properly suited for the internet of today. So this chairman, Ajit Pai of the FCC, reversed that and went back to the light touch regulatory framework, which I think is helpful because it will enable our carrier members to invest in broadband networks and know they can recover some of the value that they're investing when they build these networks out. That they can charge for specialized services. They can pay, you know, they can get paid for what they provide. The problem is that now over 22 state attorneys general are suing the FCC, saying they don't have the authority. A number of states are saying that they're going to put up their own net neutrality rules. Supposedly it's preempted by the FCC, so they can't do it on their own. But the FCC also deregulated and took away its own authority, so we don't have authority over that. But we also preempt the states, so we're going to see what the courts do. This is back in the courts, and it's also back in Congress. Ideally, Congress would set the rules of the law that says, here are the rules of net neutrality. So that when the Republicans take over the FCC, they don't flip it back, and the Democrats take over and they flip it back. The industry doesn't have the regulatory certainty they need to make the investments and to know they'll recover those funds. But given the level of dysfunction in Congress, and given how polarized this issue has become, I'm really doubtful that Congress is going to do that. So we might see continued sort of ping-ponging of that. At the FCC, we're seeing, I think, unprecedented support for getting things done. We're going to hear more about this on the regulatory panel that's coming up in a few minutes this afternoon. But we are seeing, just last week, the FCC adopted an order that they're going to discuss in more detail, having to do with how federal laws are applied to small cells in particular. So that NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, and the historic preservation rules have been kind of torturing folks who are trying to develop small cell networks. Every little node becomes like a big tower, and it takes forever. So the FCC said basically these facilities aren't federal undertakings anymore. The only reason that they even had to go through all these reviews is because they use licensed spectrum. So all of a sudden it becomes a federal undertaking. They have to go through all these federal rules. You put up Wi-Fi, it doesn't use licensed spectrum, no federal rules. Very similar type of deployment. So the FCC is moving in the right direction there. And they did the same thing with tribal reviews. I'm sure a lot of you have been sort of subject to all kinds of delays and excessive fees. You know, Tom Dash and I come from Indian country and have enormous respect for the heritage of Native Americans and would never want to do anything to disturb it. But what was happening was a handful of tribes were going outside of their own historic areas and charging fees and causing delays, claiming they had historic interest, but virtually none of these were coming up with any problems at all. But they were basically making cottage industry out of charging us to do this work. So the FCC recognized that and really, I think, will put an end to it. The measures they adopted last week, I think, will address all of our concerns. We finally got, you can now move ahead without having to hear back from the tribe if they don't respond. You don't have to pay fees up front or pay for their expensive consultants unless you agree on it. So I think this will help you get your job done, and at the same time respect those tribal areas that really need to be preserved. Another area that we're making progress, we've been waiting for a long time, is Twilight Towers. We have about 4,000 towers that can't be used for co-locating because they have not completed the historic reviews during a period when those reviews really weren't required. These are towers that are in limbo, and they're available now, hopefully, when the FCC finalizes this with the other federal agency that they're working with for co-location. So for 13 years we've been working on this. The FCC finally came up with a plan that would exclude these towers from historic preservation review, and we're waiting to get it finalized with the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, hopefully very soon. One other issue that we're working on, is if there's not enough going on, is the Broadband Deployment Advisory Committee. Chairman Pai of the FCC created this working group and put a number of luminaries on it. I shouldn't say luminaries because I'm actually on the panel myself. I was a little self-promoting there, but there are some great members of the industry there. Mark Gansey, we have from Digital Bridge, associated with our friend Alex Gelman here. We have Ken Simon from Crown Castle, a number of other members of WIA, the carriers on there. And the goal was to basically help the FCC streamline this process, get industry input, and put it into practice. So they had 5 working groups, one of which I chaired on federal lands, and we had a group on competitive access to broadband infrastructure that was headed by Ken Simon from Crown. It got its job done and really helped move the pole attachment process forward. There's one on removing state and local regulatory barriers that got done, and there's 2 more that are being worked on now. There's a model code for municipalities, and there's a model code for states that they're trying to finalize. And you know, I think those will get done. We're meeting in April, and that'll be hopefully a model for a lot of new laws to pass. And you know, we need to get to work when you think about it, because my federal lands group, for example, 30% of land mass in the United States are federal lands. And what happened, we got this report done, it was unanimous in our working group, and miraculously enough, a lot of the provisions that we advocated were adopted by Congress last week when it passed that omnibus appropriations bill. So those of you who work in federal lands will find that under the new law, along the lines that we recommended, federal agencies have to approve or deny applications now within 270 days. So we've heard from some of you it could take 5 or 10 years. This could be a huge improvement. And if they do deny it, they have to explain it in writing. Why? And it also requires GSA to develop a common application, so you don't have to do different applications for different agencies. So, you know, a lot of streamlining of that process. So it's nice to see VDAC actually get implemented in law. Now, it's not just on the federal government level, the states as well. We're working around the clock in the states to get the industry's interests represented. We worked with our carrier members through extensive discussions to develop a model bill last year. And we've been busy this year advocating in state capitals on behalf of the industry. In every active state, we've hired a lobbyist, and it's cost a lot of resources. And our board member companies have stepped up. I thank Alex and the others for making sure that we're represented in every state capital where there's work. And in the last year, we had 15 states enact laws. The ones in orange there, including Virginia, were are being considered by the governor right now for signature. So they've been passed, but not signed by the governor. And you can see a number of states here from the South Wireless Summit region, Texas and Florida and North Carolina have enacted legislation that's largely consistent with the model that we work together with our carrier members to develop. And in 2018, we are busier than ever. We've got many more states considering this. 10 more states have bills pending right now, including Southern Wireless states of Oklahoma, Georgia, and Tennessee. As a matter of fact, I can report that the Tennessee legislature last night, the House, virtually unanimously, I think 94-1, passed its version of our model bill. So things are really, really moving, and these make a big difference because all these bills are the final say, really. You know, the federal government has limited authority, but when it comes to where the rubber meets the road, if the state passes a law and tells the localities that they have to allow the installation of wireless facilities, that's the final word. And in all of these states that we're working in, we've really transformed the landscape. And the model that we developed is providing a basis for making sure that it's responsible. We set height limits. So you can't put a new tower in the guise of a small cell. We have volumetric limits in all of these states, so that you can't put gargantuan installations in a streamlined treatment. But we streamlined it so there's shot clocks for municipal approval, so they have to operate within a certain period of time. We cut back on the excessive fees that municipalities would charge for use of their rights of way. And we updated the model in 2018 a bit, compromising. Not everybody's happy with exactly everything in the model, but in the end, what it does is, because we have a model, we're able to basically course correct. When a state legislature begins to go a little bit out of line with the model or veers too far away, we have something we can go back to and say, this is what the model reads, and try to bring it back at least to that theory. So we've really gotten a lot done and managed to keep these bills within the framework of something that serves the wireless infrastructure industry, both the tower side and small cells, and brought together the entire industry in a consensus program. So these are the basic provisions of the bill. You can get the deployment done quicker, you can get access to the right-of-way, you can get in the right-of-way quicker, and the rates are reasonable, and the model makes sure that we have the parameters we need to fix these bills. 5G, Senator actually talked about ramping up to the next generation. The work that you folks do every day is going to transform virtually every industry in this country. That's why we get so much support from policymakers. That's why my job's so easy. It looks pretty impressive. We're getting all these things done. I really can't take much credit. It's really all of you that are building these networks that are transforming, whether it's healthcare, transportation, smart cities, the way that we live our lives every day in the home. These are changing everything, and the big challenge ahead is how do we keep up? How do we keep up when mobile data traffic is expected to grow fivefold in the next 5 years? It means a lot more equipment. So basically, there's 3 ways you can do this. I've spoken about this before at the summit. You've got more spectrum, you can have more efficient technology, you can have more infrastructure. And the fact is, all 3 are essential to meeting that level of data growth that we're faced with. But I think that we've got to turn those dials up as far as we can, because we need them all. We need the dials to work. Crank it up. There we go. 1, 2, 3, boom. Especially the infrastructure one. We turn that one up to 11, because it really is infrastructure of the 3. You all know there's not enough spectrum, and good Lord is not creating any more spectrum. Technology enables us to use the spectrum we have more efficiently. But what's really doing the lion's share of the work, and I don't just say this as the head of WIA, there's plenty of studies that are backing me up on this, it is infrastructure that's doing the lion's share of the work. And one of my favorite charts is from Moffett-Nathanson that looked at how we've dealt with the increase in data over the last 45 years. And you can see that, spectrum has played a part, more technology has played a part. But again, the bulk of the work is just the brute force of building wireless infrastructure. And 5G networks are going to require more towers, more installations on existing towers, more small cells, more antennas closer to the end user. And Senator Daschle said we need to be creative in thinking about how we're going to deploy this to get the coverage and the capacity that we need. And I'm really glad that you touched on the skills gap, because to build out this level of equipment is going to take quite a bit. I mean, we have 850,000 jobs in this industry, according to one estimate, are going to be created in the telecommunications sector, and that's going to enable 5 million jobs in the overall economy. But there's a dramatic skills gap, as you all face every day, and Carrie's going to talk about this more tomorrow. And we've been working with her on trying to do it. She can't find enough people. You all hit her up and say, hey, I need a tech here, I need a foreman. And, where are you going to find them? We've got to create some new blood in this industry if we're going to get the technical skills that we need to not have thousands of jobs being unfilled or filled with unqualified people. And then you see the labor rates go up, you see quality and safety go down. I see Todd Schlechtway's here, and Nate has done an enormous amount to try to improve safety in this industry. We applaud all of your efforts, but it's not going to happen unless we get people trained properly. And so WIA really tried to step up to fill that because we're a nonprofit. We created the Telecommunications Education Center by the industry, for the industry, to provide the best in class, so to speak, education opportunities for our industry. We brought in academics, we brought in industry experts, and nobody else is doing this kind of programming across the board. We're supporting the apprenticeship program as well, that the president helped to get funded in that package. So we developed a series of courses, both online and in person we can offer. We can customize them for your industry that will provide your team members with the skills that they need. In fact, we're offering a class here for the first time at a show this afternoon on 5G here at the South Wireless Summit. Dr. Rick Thacker is here from the University of Maryland, who's going to cover the basics of 5G. I see Dr. Thacker here, and talk about the valuable insights that he has, both as an industry member and a distinguished member of the faculty at the University of Maryland. We have to make sure that this works. So we have courses in DAS and small cells. We're hearing a lot of problems, and Carrie keeps telling us about, we can't find enough techs to do the DAS and small cell work. But these courses aren't just academic. I mean, they're designed to give real-world training, designed to give your workforce the skills they need. So we have a table out there, happy to answer any of your questions. I am, or our team, we have some materials for you there. And looking forward to our event coming up in a couple months, ConnectX in Charlotte, May 21st to 24th. We've combined the HeadNet Expo with our big annual show, and it's really going to be a blockbuster this year. Just learned yesterday, as a matter of fact, that Charlie Ergen is going to be at our show. So he doesn't speak very often from the Dish Networks, and he's got a $1 billion bill that he hasn't talked about publicly. But I think the first time he's going to get unveiled is at our show. And he's got going to be followed by the chairman of the FCC, Chairman Ajit Pai, to talk about all he's doing to help our industry and what's going on with net neutrality. We're going to talk about everything from macro structures to small cells, combining the entire ecosystem from fiber below our feet to the towers that rise far above it, from the technology that's driving the wireless network densification. We're going to have a connected car, bringing together really the entire ecosystem of wireless. It's sort of we're broadening out the way we've done it in the past, trying to really get to all the different aspects of our industry. We're focusing on smart cities and connected communities, macro cell towers and edge infrastructure, private LTE networks, connected real estate, vehicle infrastructure, critical LTE communications, innovations in infrastructure, and we're offering workshops on workforce development, of course, through our tech program. And we also are hosting we've now annualized our Supplier Diversity Summit. Some of you have participated in that in the past. Basically, if you haven't heard about it, we bring together the big companies that are putting out the contracts, the carriers, the large wireless companies, with small businesses, veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, to try to create more diversity in the supply chain for our industry. So if you have a small business, you own one of those businesses, please sign up because we're bringing out procurement officers from the largest companies in our industry that are doing the biggest contracts. We want to make sure that you are availing yourselves of this opportunity. So, we're trying to do all we can to help out the industry, driving connectivity to everyone, everywhere. We're focused on the premier event for our industry. We're focused on making sure you have the training you need, where your voice in Washington, your voice in the States. And it's always a thrill to come to the South Florida Summit and see what a great job Steve Nicely's doing, bringing together this group so that you can be a strong voice and learn and get educated yourselves about what the latest trends are, what's happening, in terms of regulation, what's happening in terms of the industry. Always the people that come here are the cutting edge, and you're the ones that spend the extra time and effort to figure out what's coming around the corner, and what a great place to do it. So thanks for having me here today. Great to be with you. It's okay if anybody has any questions or comments or great bats or leftover breakfast you want to throw at me. Did I cover it? Yes.
So you're talking about improvements to federal siting and land. What about like HUD and some of those other agencies that own property that's in the urban oriented that do a lot of their new releases and it seems like it's going in the other direction?
Well, HUD has been, was actually on our working group, and they didn't participate very much. All the federal agencies are required under this new law to comply with those requirements. So they're now required, including HUD, to quickly resolve that. I mean, HUD has a really strange thing about fall zones, and we've dealt with that, where for wireless towers, if you're getting a HUD property, you have to prove that the tower is you're not in the fall zone of the tower, which is just a complete waste of time, because they don't ask that about anything else, and we're going to try to get that fixed. But when it comes to siting on HUD property, they're supposed to comply with it, so they're going to be under the deadlines, under the application program. And again, there's some recommendations in our working group that aren't in here that we're trying to get the Trump administration to promote as well. So HUD is included under that, and all federal agencies are required to, by this new law, to comply. Anything else? All right. Thanks, folks.